Okay, so here we go. Now I'm in Infinity Designer and I'm going to say File, New. And I'm going to look at my presets and I'm going to do, let's just go with an 8.5 by 11 if I can find it. There it is, 8.5 by 11. And we will create a new document. But before I do that, I'm going to make a decision. Do I want my orientation to be a portrait, which is vertical, or a landscape? I'm going to go landscape, horizontal, and I'm going to say create. All right, there's my document. Next step, I need to place my sketch. So I already took a picture. So I'm going to say File, Place. I'm going to navigate to wherever it is that I saved that, and I'm going to place it into my document. The only problem is I don't know where I saved it, so I got to find it. All right, so let's try this again. File, I'm going to place, there it is, sketch, open, and then just tap down. There we go. There's my sketch. We are going to be tracing this. So the sketch doesn't have to look great. It's super rough. That's fine. So what you want to do is once you place it, you want to take this background layer and you're going to lock it. All right. You're not going to want to accidentally keep selecting it. When we work, we are going to use vectors to kind of trace this with line work. I'm not going to go over a whole tutorial because we did it kind of with the fish, but I am going to lock and then I'm going to decide what I want to use. Do I want to use my pen or do I want to use my pencil? And I'll go ahead and I'll ink my drawing and I'll be back. All right, so I'm going to go with the pen tool for mine. I think it's easier, especially if you don't have a mouse, but you can go back and forth between the pen and the pencil. I am going to take my sketch layer and I'm going to take the opacity down. I just don't want to see all that line work. And then I'm going to start. I'm going to take my pen and I'm just going to kind of trace the outline of this little guy first. So you can either try to make it all one line, but you are allowed, so Alt to break the handle, to use multiple lines. So for instance, let's say once I come here, I want to kind of have the line end right there. So hold down Control and I'll tap. And I do have a line. You can see it's really thin. So I am going to take my tools here. I'm going to select that line and I'm going to make my stroke a little bit thicker. And we can always do this after the fact, right? So don't forget about the fish tutorial. We can always make the line thick or thin or tapered, and I will go back and do that. So one of the things that I noticed is some of you, craftsmanship wise, you kind of did the basics, but you didn't go back and fix. Remember, this is an art class. So the software is one thing, but you have to go back and refine till everything looks good, all right? So if you are going to make this line, all right, that's fine. Just make sure that we don't have gaps, all right? So I don't want a gap, so I'm going to overlap those lines. Yes, they are way too thick. That's okay. I'm going to go back and I'll refine my line work. So it doesn't have to look great in the very first pass. That's okay. That's why we have the computer, to refine. You want to make sure, though, that you're going back and you are refining. All right. So right now, I'm going to just go ahead and trace the basic character, and we'll be back. All right. So I went through and I roughed out my line work. This is not done. This is pretty bad. So the idea isn't to race; it's to take your time. It should be fun, right? But you got to take your time. So this is a rough draft. It looks okay, but there's definitely some things that are confusing. I am going to turn off my background so I can look at this and see what's working and what's not. Well, I forgot to put another pupil in the eye, so I need to do that. Down by this coffee can, it is definitely lacking, right? So I didn't finish, or I missed part of the tentacle. And there are some visually confusing parts to this design, all right? But some of it's intentional. If I zoom in, you're going to notice I did a lot of this, overlapping lines. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, I'm going to add the missing detail, and eventually, when I'm happy, I'm going to get in here and I'm going to erase these overlapping lines, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But again, this is not done. We are not finished here. Zoom out a little bit, but it's a start. So now it's time to clean up my lines. Okay, so I added those little extra missing pieces. Now I'm going to go back, take my black arrow, and I'm going to select the individual lines, and I'm going to decide with my stroke whether I want them to be thinner or thinner, thicker or thinner, sorry. And we want to make sure that we look at the profile. So not every line should be perfectly straight. So you can see the line width is here. And if we come down here to where it says pressure, what you can do is you can actually click and you can change these anchor points. And what they'll do is it'll change the profile of your line work. So sometimes it's nice to have a thick line and sometimes it's nice to have a tapered line. So you can see I'm going to go thin and it's going to get a little thicker towards the head. And you can do that with these little profiles. If you have a line that you like, you can also save that profile, all right? And then you can go back and you can select something else and you can take the stroke options. If I go to pressure, I can always reset it and then I have a nice new profile to start to work with. And you can come in here and you can click these individual anchor points and you can decide the thickness or if there's any tapering that you might want to do. All right, so now it's time to go in and add line and line variety. Okay, so I've gone through and I've added some line variety. Now I'm going to go through and see if I have any big gaps, all right, or if there's any lines that I want to change the profile on. There is rhyme or reason to what you're doing here. So lines should go thin and thick. You know, perhaps like the line coming from the body is thicker and it tapers off as it gradually fades away. Bolder lines are going to attract emphasis, right? They're going to kind of bring people in and grab attention. So sometimes you want some lines a little thicker than others. Real quick review, if you're changing the profile of a brush, all right, or the pressure, if for whatever reason these ends kind of go in tangent with one another, you can always hold down Alt and then individually modify an anchor point if it gets stuck for you. All right, so just keep that in mind. All right, so as I look at this, I do see some gaps. I don't want gaps. If you look carefully here, there's a gap. So white arrow, all right, it's your anchor select tool, the node tool, and I'll just kind of close that gap. And it's actually okay to overlap a little bit because we have a way to clean up all these little overlapping lines, and we're going to do that next. But you do want to go through and make sure that you closed off any areas. Even this one, though it's closed, I might just err on the side of caution and just kind of clean these up a little bit. And if you don't love a line, like this line's too thick, go back and just keep fixing, right? Thick and thin line. And you can add as much detail as you want. And what I'm going to do in a little bit is I am going to go back and add some more detail. So fix up any gaps and make sure your line is how you want it.